One of my great passions in life is going down the crest around St. Moritz. Well, not now, of course, but when I was younger. And I was a member of what they call the Toboggan Club of Great Britain. And they hold a dinner every year in London. In 1954, it was at the Park Lane Hotel. And by that time, I'd made quite a few television appearances, so they asked me to make a speech. A short speech, but they said people would like to see you. Well, there were about 400 people in the room, and I was sitting at the top table right at the end when I was asked to speak. And during the reception, a pianist had been playing quietly in one corner of the room, and in fact some people came over to him and asked him for requests, and he played their numbers, whatever they'd asked for. It was a very pleasant atmosphere. And when I got up to speak, he stopped playing. Now I knew the man, his name is Eric James, he was a well-known pianist, and I turned to him and I said, Eric, please don't stop, it's very pleasant, and I'm not going to speak very long. So he continued to play. Then I said a few words and said, well, I feel sure that you'd rather see me do something than just talk. There was a sort of murmur of approval. And I reached next to me and asked the lady if I could borrow a cigarette. In those days, nearly everybody smoked. I picked up the cigarette, I looked at it for a moment, then I threw it high in the air, where it exploded in a huge flame and a puff of smoke, just a ring of smoke, rising up to the high ceiling of the ballroom. And of course, everybody sort of oohed and ahed. I said, well, that's not really spectacular. Let me do something bigger. What can I do? And I looked around, and then I looked up at the chandeliers. There were 3 large glass chandeliers in the room. They were Art Deco from the 1920s and 30s, all glass and lights, and looked very beautiful, but rather old-fashioned. And I said, I know, I'll make the chandelier disappear. And of course nobody believed it. And then I waved my hands in a magical gesture, and believe it or not, the light started to flicker. Not only that, but the chandelier started to shimmer and shake, and then it started to sway, and of course, that moment it looked quite frightening. People thought it was going to come crashing down, and a woman screamed. Well, if one woman screams, a lot of women would scream, and they did. So, of course, everybody was looking at the chandelier. I said, I realize this is too dangerous. I know what, I'll make the piano disappear like this. And I pointed to the piano, and the pianist, he was just about to hit the keyboard, and he fell flat on his face, a bizarre, surreal figure in a dinner jacket, lying flat on the parquet flooring, not moving, and the piano had gone. Well, there was no applause, but it wasn't presented as a trick. It was just one of the things happened. Everybody looked around in shock and tried to find the piano and couldn't, and the dinner seemed to break up. Everybody was literally looking around. In fact, some guest even asked the manager, said, where do you keep your grand piano? And he said, I'm sorry. He said, where do you keep the large piano? He said, we have never had a grand piano in this hotel. Well, as we've become friends, I'm going to tell you exactly how I did that. It became a talking point for many years, especially amongst magicians. Whenever I went anywhere to a magic club to give a talk or lecture, I was always asked to recount the day the piano vanished. I had planned to do something big many months before, so I went along to the hotel to look at it and look at the room, and I saw that at one end of the large ballroom they had a small stage with an upright piano. Well, that didn't give me any ideas at all. I wanted to vanish something large. And then the idea struck me, wouldn't it be fantastic to vanish a piano? But how could I afford to get a piano and doctor it up in some way? So I found out that a concert band, which is much larger than a grand piano, it's huge, there's only a short life. It's used in concert halls for solo pianists and for symphonies and so on. And when that kind of piano comes to the end of its career, it's scrap, because it's just too big for people's houses or flats. Very few people would ever have a concert grand. So it's thrown away on the scrap heap. And I scouted around. Just outside London, I found a scrap dealer who had one of those pianos ready to be smashed up. And I bought it for £6. Yeah, that's quite a lot of money in those days, but very cheap for a piano. I then had it removed, and some friends helped me to take out all the innards, all the heavy metal bits, and all the strings and the hammers and everything. And then we cut it into 4 pieces. And of course we needed some more legs to support those pieces. And once they were painted matte black, people just didn't notice it. When the guests arrived for the reception, everybody walked in. Some people walked to the pianist. Nobody thought of looking underneath the piano to see the extra legs. And they asked him for requests. Now, how did that work? Well, not far from him was a small bandstand with 5 musicians on it. But behind a curtain was an upright piano with a man playing it, which was amplified. And Eric, my piano friend, was miming on the keyboard, and everybody believed that he was playing. Our sound is very deceptive. If you look in one direction and you have a bell there, and another bell rings over there, providing you convince the audience that you're looking at the bell and you expect it to ring, sound is deceptive, and you would believe that bell rang when it was really another bell somewhere else. And the same with the piano. Providing they see a piano, they see a pianist, they believe that the sound must be coming from that piano, especially as it was amplified over the speakers. And some people, as I said, even asked him for requests. He repeated it rather loudly to make sure that the other pianist would hear it. So yes, of course I know that tune, and by that time both of them, one was playing, one was miming. I had arranged for a whole team of my friends to act as dummy waiters. They were actually in their white jackets with serviettes over their arms, and all they did was move around the guest, pouring water or clearing an ashtray or whatever. Now, why didn't the hotel waiters realize that? Because waiters are actually brought in from agencies, so they don't know all the waiters. And if they behave in a normal way, it's not suspicious. And they had been trained to wait for the appropriate moment to go out to the piano, which, as I said, was cut into 4 pieces, plus the keyboard, and 2 picked up each piece. There were another 2 waiting at the doors, 2 wide doors, holding them open. And as I had all the attention of the room on the chandeliers, and somebody was screaming, and the lights were flickering, and the chandelier was swaying, I defy anyone not to look up, and they all did. And just out of sight, my friends gathered round the piano, picked up the pieces, quietly moved out of the room, the doors closed. Eric remained miming. We still heard the sound, and when I said, I'll make the piano disappear like that, the drummer beat the bass drum very loudly, and Eric threw himself on the floor and just stayed there, and he did it extremely well. It was very deceptive. And everyone looked over and couldn't believe that on a solid parquet floor, this piano had vanished. Well, it caused absolute chaos. They looked everywhere. They went to the management. That was the best part, asking the manager where he keeps his grand piano, and he said, we've never had one in this hotel.